She married a silent servant to escape her cruel mate. Then the Alpha King removed his golden mask. Elira Voss had learned, over 4 long years, how to make herself small. She had learned how to walk through rooms without drawing attention, how to speak only when spoken to, and how to hide the marks on her arms beneath long sleeves, even in the warmth of summer. She had been mated to Cade Thornwood since she was 18 years old, a match decided by pack elders and sealed by an ancient bond neither of them had chosen. Cade was strong, Cade was handsome, Cade was, to everyone outside their home, the perfect beta of the Ashfall pack. Behind closed doors, he was something else entirely. It was not always violence. Sometimes it was only words, sharp and cutting, meant to remind her that she belonged to him and always would. Sometimes it was silence, a cold and punishing kind, that made her feel invisible. And sometimes, when his temper broke past its limits, it was worse. Elira had stopped hoping for kindness long ago. She had started hoping only for a way out. That hope arrived, unexpectedly, on a grey autumn morning when the pack elders announced a visit from the Alpha King. The king ruled the Silver Pine Pack, the largest and most powerful territory in the region. He rarely left his own lands, and rumors about him were plentiful because so few people had actually seen him. Some said he was scarred from an old battle, some said he refused to show his face because of a curse. What everyone agreed on was this: he traveled with a servant who never spoke a single word. The servant was said to be mute, loyal, and utterly without ambition, content to fade into the background wherever the king went. Elira barely paid attention to the political importance of the visit. She was too busy staring at an old law, one she had found buried in the pack archive years earlier, half by accident. The law stated that a mating bond, however binding, could be legally dissolved if one party entered a formal marriage recognized by an outside pack authority. It was ancient and rarely used, meant for political alliances long since forgotten. But it was still there, still true. If she could marry someone, anyone, under the right conditions, her bond to Cade would be severed. The idea terrified her. It also gave her the first real hope she had felt in years. She noticed the silent servant on the second day of the delegation's stay. He stood near the edge of every gathering, dressed simply, his face concealed behind a plain golden mask that the visiting party said was part of an old tradition among the king's closest attendants. He never spoke. He never reacted to insults thrown carelessly by pack members who assumed he could not understand them. He simply watched, calm and still, like a man who had made peace with being overlooked. Elira approached him on the 3rd night, her heart pounding so hard she thought he might hear it. She had rehearsed the words 100 times in her head, yet they still came out shaking. "I need help," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder before continuing. "I need to marry someone quickly, someone who will not hurt me, someone who does not want anything from me. I know this is strange. I know I have no right to ask a stranger this, but I am desperate, and I have heard you ask for nothing in return for your service. I am asking you to consider this." The servant tilted his head slightly, listening. Elira braced herself for him to walk away, or worse, to report her foolish request to someone in power. Instead, he nodded once. It was such a small gesture, barely a movement at all, yet it changed the entire direction of her life. Word moved quickly through the pack once the arrangement became known, though few understood the full truth behind it. The elders, eager to maintain good relations with the Silver Pine delegation, allowed the marriage to proceed under the old law, perhaps assuming it would be a temporary formality that meant little in the long run. Cade did not see it that way at all. He arrived at Elira's quarters the night before the ceremony, his face twisted with fury. "You think a servant can protect you from me?" he snarled. "You think hiding behind a mute nobody changes anything?" Elira did not answer him. She had learned, long ago, that answering only fed his anger. She simply stood still until he left, slamming the door hard enough to shake the walls. The wedding itself was small and quiet, held in a private hall with only a handful of witnesses. Elira wore a simple grey dress, nothing celebratory, nothing joyful. She felt strange standing beside a man whose face she had never fully seen, whose voice she had never heard, yet who had agreed to save her from a life she could no longer bear. When the ceremony ended, and the old law was formally invoked, she felt the mating bond to Cade break inside her chest, like a tight cord finally cut. For the first time in 4 years, she could breathe without pain. In the days that followed, Elira expected her new husband to remain distant, perhaps disappearing back into the background of the king's traveling party once his duty was complete. Instead, he stayed close. He walked with her through the pack grounds. He sat near her during meals, saying nothing but somehow making his presence feel steady rather than empty. When Cade approached her once in the marketplace, voice low and threatening, the silent servant stepped between them without hesitation, his stance calm but immovable. Cade backed away, muttering something under his breath, and did not try again that day. Elira found herself watching her husband more closely than she expected to. His silence was not the silence of someone empty or broken. It was the silence of someone who chose his moments carefully, who listened more than most people ever did, who seemed to understand far more than a simple servant should. He never raised his voice, never lashed out, never made her feel small. For the first time in years, she felt safe standing beside another person. She did not know his name, no one had ever told her, and she had never asked, assuming it did not matter. But slowly, quietly, she began to feel something she had not expected to feel again. Comfort, and something warmer than comfort, blooming carefully in a place she had thought long since numb. The peace did not last. 2 weeks after the wedding, Cade made his move. Gathering a handful of loyal pack members who resented the growing influence of the Silverpine delegation, he confronted the visiting party openly in the central courtyard, demanding that the marriage be dissolved and Elira returned to him. His voice rang out across the grounds, drawing a crowd within minutes. "This is not a real marriage," he shouted. "A silent servant, hiding behind a mask, has no right to claim a mate of this pack. I demand she be returned to her rightful bond." Elira stood frozen at the edge of the courtyard, watching as Cade's small group moved forward, clearly intending to force the issue through strength rather than law. Her husband stepped forward immediately, placing himself between her and the approaching group without a flicker of hesitation. One of the Silverpine guards, standing near the delegation's carriages, called out sharply, "Stand down, you are threatening the king's envoy." Cade laughed, cold and dismissive. "That servant is no envoy, he is nothing." The guard's expression shifted to something close to alarm. "You do not understand who you are speaking to." Confusion rippled through the gathered crowd. Elira felt her husband's hand rest briefly against her shoulder, steady and reassuring, before he stepped fully in front of her, facing Cade directly. Slowly, deliberately, he reached up and removed the golden mask he had worn every single day since she had met him. The courtyard fell utterly silent. Elira stared at the face revealed beneath the mask, a face she recognized instantly, though she had never expected to see it in front of her like this. It was the face from old portraits kept in the pack archive, the face spoken of in hushed, reverent tones across every territory in the region. It was the Alpha King himself, Renwick Ashvale, ruler of the Silverpine pack. Cade's confidence collapsed in an instant. His loyal followers stepped back, several of them lowering their eyes immediately, understanding the danger they had just walked into. "You have been disguising yourself," Elira whispered, still too stunned to fully process what she was seeing. Renwick's voice, when he finally spoke aloud, was calm and steady, nothing like the silence she had grown used to. "I travel this way often," he said. "Being recognized everywhere I go makes it difficult to see how people truly behave, or to understand what they truly need. I heard your request that night by accident. I was not meant to be near enough to hear it, but once I did, I could not walk away from it." Cade, pale and shaking now, attempted a final protest. "This changes nothing. She belongs. She belongs to no one but herself," Renwick said, his voice sharpening for the first time since Elira had known him. "Jawa Kenawi Shamoria, and she is now under the protection of the Silverpine pack, by marriage recognized under law that predates your pack's very existence. If you threaten her again, you threaten me directly. I would advise against that." Cade's followers dispersed almost instantly, dragging him backward before he could say anything else foolish. Within moments the courtyard had emptied, leaving only Elira, Renwick, and a handful of visibly relieved Silverpine guards. Elira turned to face him fully, her mind still struggling to catch up with everything that had happened. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why would a king agree to something like this?" "You could have simply ordered Cade to leave me alone. You did not need to marry me." Renwick considered the question carefully before answering. "An order from a king is temporary. People obey out of fear, and fear fades once the king is no longer watching. A marriage is permanent, recognized by law, impossible to argue against, without direct challenge, to the crown itself. I did not want to give you temporary safety. I wanted to give you something lasting." "But you did not know me," Elira said. "You still do not fully." "I know enough," Renwick replied. "I know you were desperate enough to approach a stranger with no guarantee of kindness, and brave enough to follow through with it. I know you never once complained during these past 2 weeks, though I imagine adjusting to a marriage built on secrecy has not been easy. And I know that when I stepped in front of you today, you did not flinch away from me, even after everything you have survived. That tells me quite a lot." Elira felt her throat tighten, emotion rising unexpectedly. "I thought I had only escaped one danger," she admitted. "I did not expect to find anything more than safety." "You do not have to expect anything more than that now either," Renwick said gently. "The marriage stands, whether you wish to build something further from it, or simply live safely within its protection. That choice belongs entirely to you. I will not force anything onto you that you do not want." For the first time in longer than she could remember, Elira felt the full weight of a genuine choice resting in her own hands. No elder had decided this for her. No ancient bond had been forced upon her without consent. She looked at the man in front of her, a king who had chosen silence and humility over the comfort of his own crown, simply to understand the world a little more honestly, and who had used that same humility to shield her when she needed it most. "I do not want only safety," she said finally, her voice steadier than she expected. "I would like to know you properly, not the servant, not only the king, whoever you are underneath both of those things." A small, genuine smile crossed Renwick's face, the first she had seen from him since they met. "Then that is where we will begin," he said, slowly and honestly, with nothing hidden between us any longer. Elira nodded, feeling something settle inside her chest that she had not felt in years, something close to hope, and something even closer to peace. She had married a silent servant to escape a life of cruelty. She had not expected to find, beneath a golden mask, a man willing to give her exactly what she had never truly had before, a real and honest choice, freely given, freely made, entirely her own.